Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting, the first one of 2024. It's going to be webcast. So before we start the proceedings, can I bring to your attention some housekeeping matters? There's no expected fire alarm testing today. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please follow the fire and emergency procedures and leave via the nearest fire exit. Can I also ask, please, that you use a microphone when addressing the meeting, and it's switched off when you are not using it. And can you please make sure your mobile devices are turned to silent? So can we and your laptops, I should say. Before we take apologies, could I just say how fantastic it is to welcome back the Deputy Leader of the Council to her place after a recent stay away, and you are most welcome. Thank you to Councillor Dan for your stepping in before Christmas in these meetings. That was very kind of you. And Councillor Lowry and Councillor Aspinall are still not with us. We'll be returning soon. Are there any declarations of interest to any of the items on the agenda? Mark.
Thank you, Chair. For item number 12 on the Licensing Act, as a licence holder myself, I will be leaving the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are you a practising or non-practising licensee?
I am non-practising, but the licence stays with you for life. So should I get the urge to go back?
Well, we'll see what happens under item 12, shall we? Okay, so I now move to item number 3 on the agenda, which is minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 11th of December. So can I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December was signed as a correct record? All agreed? Yep, thank you. Questions from the public? There've been no questions received from the public. I now move to item 5, Chair's Urgent Business. There's no Chair's Urgent Business. So we move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is items from scrutiny. It's the budget scrutiny recommendations. Now we're joined by Councillor Darcy, live from somewhere in Devon. Of course, Councillor Darcy, Chair of the Performance, Finance and Customer Focus Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is very easy for me to say. Over to you, Councillor Darcy. Would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Leader. I'm grateful that I could appear live from somewhere in Devon in order to present the findings to you today. Leader, as you all and your Cabinet members will be aware, this year's budget scrutiny was undertaken slightly earlier in the budget cycle and before the details of the local government finance settlement were available. So please accept that caveat. The committee, as you will be aware, met across 2 days in December to review the budget. The composition of the scrutiny committee reflected the wider membership of scrutiny function, and all scrutiny chairs took a role in the process. In chairing the committee, I was ably assisted by Councillor Murphy in the vice chair, for which I'm incredibly grateful. Firstly, I would like to thank Cabinet and Council officers for the quality of the papers received and the very open, frank discussions which took place over the 2 days. This year, the committee focused on the key challenges and risks facing the council, and the scrutiny sessions were structured accordingly. We had very robust discussions concerning children and young people's services, adult social care, homelessness and the cost of living crisis. Leader, as you will have seen from your papers before you, as a result of those discussions, the committee undertook to make representations to government, highlighting the difficulty of operating services in the financial climate. It's not my intention, unless you require me to do so, to address all 8 of those recommendations. Perhaps if I alight on recommendation number 2, again, as we do every year, request a review of the adult social care funding model, so that funding is allocated on a need and demand rather than the ability of the council to raise council tax. And perhaps item number 7 of those 8 recommendations, to review homeschool transport eligibility and additional options which could mitigate costs to the local authority. Leader, the committee also agreed to make recommendations before you today.
Could I just stop you there for a minute, Councillor
Sure.
Darcy? I've just got I'm in difficulty following the new
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor
nomenclature.
Darcy. The report that we're looking at seems to either have a different numbering system to you or completely different recommendations. So not quite sure about the inconsistencies there.
Well, on that basis, perhaps if I go through them, Leader, if that would assist.
Could you just tell us which page, because the recommendations to Cabinet are on page 14 of our Cabinet papers.
Yes, just.
Is that what you're... I'll bring in Mr. Jago at this point.
Good afternoon, Leader. Sorry, I'm not sure what's happened to Councillor Darcy's video. Looks as though it's frozen. Councillor Darcy was reflecting on the agreement that the Select Committee had made to write to government over a number of issues, including the multi-year settlement, representations in reference to homelessness and homeschool transport. I think he was just coming on to those recommendations specifically made to Cabinet, and those are the ones that are detailed in your report. I think Councillor Darcy's intention was to give a wider view of the process that scrutiny had undertaken, whilst also referring to your recommendations direct to Cabinet.
Well, I'm told that the Scrutiny Committee have got their own work programme, and they've agreed to write to government themselves. I think that's what Councillor Darcy was referring to, was the work that, I mean, it's a bit odd that we're getting treated to that when it's not in front of us today. So, you know, it wouldn't be necessarily my wish that we would consider what Scrutiny have decided to do off their own bat. It just seems a bit odd. We weren't made aware of that. No, homeschool transport not mentioned at all. And again, I'm a bit puzzled as to why if it's that significant that they write to government, that it's not actually been made in the recommendations to Cabinet. This is very odd indeed. I'm not absolutely sure about the way to proceed at the moment. Councillor Darcy is frozen in time. Shall I move on to another item until Councillor Darcy can rejoin us?
I think that would be very sensible.
Shall I do that at the moment, and then we'll come back? If we can re-establish a connection with Councillor Darcy, we will do that. So in which case, if I can move on to item number 7, which is the Budget Engagement Highlight Report, pages 17 to 28, Jemima Lang to present.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the welcome back. I'm very happy to be back. So I'll give you a bit of background to the budget engagement. We launched our annual budget engagement in November, which ran for 4 weeks and received 436 online responses from a wide range of people in the city. An engagement with business representatives took place on the 13th of December 2023, and we received a supportive letter in response from the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce. The questionnaire asked respondents to select up to 3 priorities that the Council should focus on in the coming year, and also to provide their level of agreement on 6 statements in regard to managing the Council's budget. So we had a good response to this engagement with some really considered comments, and they do provide an indication of people's priorities and level of support of what we are setting out to do. So the report before you, the idea today is to note the engagement report, consider the results in relation to the final budget recommendation to the Council. So just some headlines around the results. On Council priorities, the top priorities selected most often as those the Council should focus on over the next 12 months were working with the NHS to provide better access to health, care and dentistry. 251 respondents wanted us to do that. Fewer potholes, cleaner, greener streets and transport, and that was the top priorities of 169 respondents. Working with the police to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour, and those are the priorities of 160 respondents. So working with the NHS to provide better access to healthcare and dentistry was the top priority across all age groups for both female and male respondents, and for those veterans who responded, and for those who said they had a health condition or disability, and for those who said they had experience of the care system. The results on managing our budget, what people told us about that was that over 90% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the Council should protect local services where possible by delivering these in different and or more efficient ways, and the Council should lobby central government for more funding and a fairer share for Plymouth. 50% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the Council should help avoid reducing or stopping services by increasing fees and charges by the rate of inflation. And the Council should avoid cutting services by following the government's assumption that councils will maintain their spending power by increasing council tax by up to 2.99%. Just over 50% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the Council should help pay for rising demand for care services for elderly and vulnerable adults, and also that the Council should help achieve the ambition for Plymouth to become a carbon neutral city by 2030 by using green energy sources wherever possible. So that's just a few of the headlines from it, and I'd like to say thank you to everybody that took the time to respond. We had some really thoughtful responses from people in the city. I mean, there aren't any big surprises in there, but it's nice to know what people prioritise tends to be people, other people in the city, and looking after them properly, and looking after our infrastructure and our green spaces, and our ambitions to be carbon neutral. So, thank you, Leader.
Right. So, sounds like a lot of responses. How was it in relation to last year's?
It was up on last year. We had 307 plus 17 email responses last year, and as I said, 436 this year. And every time we carry out an engagement like this, we'd really encourage people to have their say. I had a what's a polite word? An interaction with somebody on social media about, you know, you don't listen to us, you just do what you want. And I was actually able to point them to the budget consultation, and then they thanked me in response and said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill that in. So we would encourage as many people as possible to take part every time we carry out an exercise like this. Thank you.
Okay, so our request now is to note the engagement report and consider the results in relation to the final budget recommendation to Council. That's what we'll do. Is that agreed with everybody? Thank you. I'm going to go back now because we have been joined live again Now,
Apologies, Leader. When I clicked on your agenda document, I seem to have shut everything down at my end. So I think it's my error, not anybody else's.
okay, well, it's great to have you back with us. Now,
Thank you.
I suppose we're struggling a little bit in terms of the report that we've got, because we don't have that list of requests that the scrutiny panel has requested of government. Okay, we don't have that because, well, we just don't have it. What we have is the recommendations that have been made, which is 1 to 5.
Yeah.
And then there's a list of congratulatory ones, which we're very
Yes.
obviously delighted with. So could you focus on those for us now, please, Councillor Darcy? Rather than
Which,
the
Leader,
request
the
to government.
congratulatory cabinet are the recommendations that we were asked to consider for government?
You do both, Ian.
Leader, in my capacity of chair, after further to those discussions at scrutiny, there were a number of recommendations that were made that we were asked to give consideration to in terms of making to government. The report before you has the recommendations for cabinet, numbers 1 to 5, set out on your page 14 of your document. And then, as you rightly say, the committee were very keen, and rightly so, to reflect some of the successes of the administration, and congratulations in respect to those, and they're reflected in your report as well, items 1 to 5. Which would you like me to discuss?
I'm happy if you've nothing particularly to amplify, because we're going to have a further discussion on these in due course when we come to consider the report. I mean, what we're planning to do today is to receive your report and then to consider the recommendations that have come from scrutiny, which we would then consolidate in our final report before the budget meeting of the council. And then that will all get fed into the council meeting. Are you happy with that?
I'm very happy. Leader, apologies. I was working on the assumption that the report, which included the discussion around those points to make to government, would have been fed through to you as part of your pack. I'm sure Ross will be able to address you on that. But those recommendations were made. They're there for consideration.
Yeah.
They haven't been advanced as yet, because I assume that you would want to review and consider those also.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing for us to do here now is, in terms of those recommendations on writing letters, is to work out who's best to write them and who's best to them to be addressed to.
Of course.
Because some of them might be a matter for all of it for the Treasury, or some of it might be for different spending departments in the government. So we'll give that proper consideration as well, and then that will be part of the consolidated documents to Cabinet before Council. Okay.
Well, there's nothing further. If you're content with the report, I don't need to amplify anything else. In your hands. And
it might be premature, but if we could already thank the members of the scrutiny panel for their diligence over 2 days. It's not the easiest thing to do, and people have to give a lot of time and effort into doing this. So if we could thank you, Ian, and the scrutiny panel for their diligence in this time, and the slightly advanced nature of the determination as well. It's, as you know, it's getting later and later and later when we actually get the final decision out of government. And I suppose one of the things we're hoping is that rather than being a Christmas present in future, we could have it as perhaps more like an autumn statement than a Santa Claus wish list. But we are that is sort of out of our hands at the moment. But members, if I could ask you, is that okay if we note the report now, thank the scrutiny panel, and then we'll go again in a few weeks' time before the council meeting? Is that right? Thank you, Ian. You're free to
thank you, Leader. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So we move on now to item number 8, which is budget update, including the settlement of which we talked about. David Northey will give us a verbal update, please, on the announcement from the Chancellor.
Thank you, Leader. The first good news was it came in a couple of days earlier than we promised, so that helped me with my Christmas preparations, didn't it? It is a provisional settlement, as always, so we do have to remember that this can change, and a bit like they say about the stock exchange, it can go up and it can go down, so it is provisional, but we work with what we've got. There's a consultation now that we're all invited to take part in, which will close on the 15th of January. And there's one particular item in there that we're all getting very excited about, but I'll come to that in a second. I suppose really there were few surprises to be had in the final settlement because we had a very late autumn statement that signposted a lot of what was going on. And then DLUC very helpfully, I think, wrote to local authorities about a week before, setting out what their expectations might be. So there was a lot of information already with us. But as always, the devil's in the details, so when we get the numbers, we went through them. I think the biggest surprise, because it wasn't actually signposted, was the reduction to the services grant. And I know the leader picked that up in the press and in different interviews. And that is very disappointing because that was introduced by government because they recognised the new burdens that were inflicted upon local authorities. So they introduced a grant, and within 2 years, they've decimated it. So we took an 84% hit on that one in 1 year. So we've gone from 4 million to 2 million to, less than 1 million now. So that was not signposted for obvious reasons. Now, when we've challenged back on that one, it appears that the Secretary of State for DLUC has held some of that back as a contingency just to see how the numbers all land. So that's why I say we're all being encouraged to go back and say, now's not the time to hold on to monies, you need to get it out to where it needs to land. So I could be ever hopeful if I was an optimist that something might come back after the 15th of January when it all settles down. The other thing, no surprise again, with a general election coming towards us, I suppose, this is a 1-year settlement. We've been promised for I don't know how many years that we would get a 3-4 year settlement, but it's a 1 year again, so that's where we are. And of course, it's confirmation of what the council tax referendum limits would be at 2.99%, and that the adult social care precept will continue for another year at 2%. Other numbers that they quote in terms of when they say that we're getting increased funding is the business rates compensation grant, which has been confirmed at the September CPI of 6.7%. That's not really new money to us. That's where they've frozen the multiplier to local businesses, and they compensate us for the fact that we can't increase the bills that we send through. So it is welcome as a grant, but it's compensation for money that we would have got from another source. And then the revenue support grant, despite being trailed many years ago as disappearing, has again continued, and that one increased by the CPI 6.7% as well. So that's worth about 766,000 to us. So you can see why I'm disappointed that they give us 766 with one hand and take 1.8 million away with the same hand. New home bonus continues. A lot of people in this room might remember that that was introduced and they top sliced the revenue support grant in order to encourage everybody to build new homes. They've now dwindled that down to the fact that I can't get excited about. Plymouth's allocation for 24-25 is £43,000, where it used to be several millions. Other things that were confirmed, what we already knew from different statements, was about the social care grant, very cleverly now called the social care grant because that is their definition of both adults and children's. So there is no new funding for children's, it's all included in the social care grant. The Better Care Fund, which we negotiate with the ICB, the Integrated Care Board, has been frozen, and the Adult Social Care Market Sustainability and Discharge Funds have both increased, but again, it was money that we were expecting, so it wasn't great news to us. What does that mean overall, Leader? In terms of grants, we increased by about 9.4 million. So You will remember that we went through with a draft budget that showed a gap of 2.3 million. So, like I say, most of that money was expected and was included in there. So there's still work to be done between officers and you as Cabinet to see how we can close that £2.3 million gap. But I suppose we're moving in the right direction, and we will have a full report, Leader, at your February Cabinet.
David, I'm grateful to you. It's really important that we understand this, though, that the government have, you know, given with one hand and taken away from another. And also, the other thing that they have given is that they've given, the assumption is that they've given everybody a council tax rise to the max, and that the adult social care precept will be charged to the max. That was the assumption between the budget restatement. So when they talk about spending power, what they mean is that isn't money, that isn't government largesse. Quite a bit of that is money that they're expecting local people to pay an additional council tax for services, and that's always worth remembering. Okay, I presume, well, I'll give a little report later on about what the LGA have been saying in respect of the settlement and lobbying and everything. But it's fair to say that I think everybody had assumed, including the County Council's network, which is the voice of the Conservatives in local government, I think had anticipated there was going to be a bit more help in the settlement, and actually it turned out to be the case. I think they were trailing quite strongly that there was going to be additional help, and it has never arrived. So, you know, the prediction is now that there's going to be a number of local authorities facing adverse financial problems, including the infamous, do they call them 114? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, we hope that that isn't the case here. Councillor Lowry's made it clear that he's not expecting that, we hope that that will continue to be the case. So we'll keep working right until budget day on closing that gap, as David said. Thank you, David, and your team for making sense of a nonsensical statement from the government. Right, I'm going to move on if that's all right. We're now going to move to item 9. David's going to introduce this one as well, and perhaps this is the Council Tax Discounts and Premiums paper, which is pages 29 to 34. So, David, would you give us a quick introduction to this, please?
Thank you, Leader. Yes. Again, you will possibly remember having seen this report in a previous disguise. It was actually debated at full council in March 23. The idea being that we have to give, as a billing authority, at least 12 months' notice to council taxpayers of any changes to the council tax rules. So we put that through, and it was approved unanimously to enact what was coming forward from the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill about second homes and holiday homes. The bill got stuck, I think that's the right word, in Parliament, so it actually received royal assent in October. Now, the rules of engagement say that we have to come back again to make sure that we are still happy now that the bill has been passed. So this paper, Leader, is saying that commitment from Plymouth City Council to enact the rules, but this time with the start date of the 1st of April 25. So effectively, we have lost ground for 12 months, and we're estimating, given I think we've got about 1,100 properties that might fall into this net of income of about £1 million from council tax. So that's what this is about.
So basically, this money is not available for another 12 months. I think that's my phone, even though I switched it off. So that's right, isn't it? So in agreeing this today, we're saying we're still interested in doing this, but we can't do it for 12 months, and nobody else can either.
That's correct, Leader.
Yeah.
Some councils did decide to go to legal counsel to challenge that, but
Okay.
they were told in no uncertain points that the legislation says you must give at least 12 months notice, and you can only introduce a new council tax from the 1st of April. So that's why we've got to wait until April 25.
So that's why we've got to wait till April 25, not this coming April. Okay, that's really important to know. Thank you. So the recommendations, which are for decision, are set out in the papers. So that's to reiterate the 100% premium, and that it will be applied from April the 1st, 25, will be levied on all dwellings which are unoccupied and substantially furnished. So in other words, that's a definition of second homes. So can I ask you please to show all those in favour? Thank you. That's great. Thank you. And I now move to item 10, which is council tax base setting and council tax support scheme. This is pages 35 to 42 in your packs. So can I once again, David, turn to you for your wisdom?
Thank you, Leader. You're making my life sound so exciting with these reports. So this one is another technical report, the council tax setting for 24-25, but also, and I'm sure we could hand over to Councillor Penberthy if needed to talk about the council tax support scheme, which also we need to review on an annual basis. So it's a technical report. This forms obviously the basis of the revenue budget for the coming year, because this is the number that we use to set the council tax and then equate how much council tax income we will get. So ahead of each new financial year, it is a requirement that we calculate the number of Band D properties. That's the one that we use for council tax. I think we have to remember that the council tax that we set as Plymouth City Council does include precepts for other authorities, the fire and the police, so that's included as well. And I'll just very briefly say that in terms of the council tax support scheme, and I'm sure that Councillor Penberthy will do this more credit than I will, the basic premise is we've decided there were no major government changes to any of the schemes, so we've kept it as it was. But having said that, the Department of Work and Pensions have made some alterations, but I'll leave that to the councillor if that's okay.
David, thanks very much indeed. Councillor Penberthy, would you like to give us a bit more detail on that? Can change to or not change to the council tax support scheme?
Well, we are asking for one tweak to the rules. Unlike national benefits, which the government changes almost at will, council tax support can only be changed once a year. So if the government introduces changes during a year, we can't reflect them. Over the last year, one of the things that's happened is because of the cost of living crisis, the government has made some extra benefits available to people in receipt of certain benefits and instructed us to disregard those benefits when we were assessing housing benefit. However, they didn't instruct us to disregard the benefits in relation to council tax support, and therefore we had to take them into account as income, which changed people's council tax support. Now, that seems to us wrong, but we can't tell what the government will do in the next 12 months. So what we're proposing is that we put in a rule that says if there is such a national programme, that we are able to disregard those payments when we are dealing with council tax support assessments. So it's not a very specific, this relates to this type thing. It's a technical bit that just allows us to mirror any national relation or national benefit instruction relating to housing benefit to council tax support as well. Because that seems the fair and right thing to do. Because over the last year, sadly, we've had to take some of those crisis payments into account when assessing people's income for council tax support, which is just loopy. But anyway, it's what we were faced with. So we've put in a slight amendment. We're allowed to do a slight technical amendment without consultation. I'm aware that it has been discussed before that council tax support scheme as a whole needs to be revisited. It's several years since we revisited and brought the banding in, which made it fairer, but we've had COVID and a cost of living crisis since then. the legislation says that we have to do a 3-month consultation and a full scrutiny process on the exact proposition, not on a set of principles. So rather than us being able to say in May, we want to go out and consult on a set of principles that we're modelling at the same time in order to determine a scheme, we didn't have the time to model. So we've not been able to do the major review that we would have liked to have done for next year. But I just wanted to make it clear that we have already commissioned the modelling, and we will be looking to do a more major change to our council tax support scheme for financial year 2025 onwards, particularly looking at how we can give support to those very low income families, so claimants with children, because we think that those very low income families with children are some of the people who are suffering most. And we just need to look at the whole scheme to model various things. So this is really a very advanced notice that over next summer we will be consulting on a new council tax support scheme. We will encourage people to respond to that. We will take it to scrutiny, and next year we expect to see a fuller change to council tax support, and on that basis next year this paper will probably be 2, because the council tax support scheme as a whole will need to be included. But I just wanted to flag that it is something we're aware of. We know that people in Plymouth are concerned about it, and we will be dealing with it, but legislation has hampered our ability to react quickly this year to either changes in the government scheme or us being able to amend the scheme in a way that meets the requirements of the law. So we're doing what we can to give us a little bit of flexibility, and we will be doing that bigger review that I know we've told people that we would be doing as soon as we could. Thank you.
Okay, everybody clear? Good. In which case, can I put the recommendations to you, which is laid out on 36. It's council tax base of 75,389 equivalent band D, and that will be passed on to our friends at the police and the fire authority as well, who need these numbers. And then the continuation of the current council tax support scheme with the slight variation as laid out on paragraph 4. Is that all right? All agreed? Please show. Thank you very much. That's carried. So I now move on to item number 11, please, which is the proposed amendments to the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Policy 2022. Now, Sally is here, Sally Hayden, and we're joined by Graham and Nicola, and they're going to be offering their advice after Sally's done the intro. So over to you, Sally, please.
And thank you, Leader. I welcome the policy in front of you today. I have to say, this Labour administration made a promise to the people of Plymouth that we would look at our taxi trade in total. People of Plymouth, our residents, our visitors, are struggling of being able to get a taxi to come around the city. And that could be from going to a hospital appointment, our nighttime economy, going just to do your general shopping, or going to visit family and friends. This is due to a lack of trade that we actually have in the city. We're also struggling, our nighttime economy are struggling with staff, having staff of an evening, trying to get their staff home, or even NHS staff trying to get home because they're not able to get a taxi to get them home. So, what have we done? We have looked at our policy in total, and I felt that we need to one, listen to the residents and visitors, but we also, most importantly, we also needed to listen to our trade as well. So we went out to a consultation and asked several questions. So we've also considered and committed to our violence against women and girls. We've looked at our knowledge test of the city, of our private hire, sorry. Now, the knowledge test for private hire, we are looking at removing only for private hire, because they now come under great technology where they use sat navs and taxi operators, where our hackney drivers don't. And also, while going through our consultation, the Department of Transport for Best Practice Guidance issued a statement that the KOP test should be removed from private hires due to the technology used by taxi operators, meaning private hire drivers know their planned routes in advance, and we have considered their guidance on that one as well. This will allow private hire to hopefully open the doors, and we will be able to see more drivers come through. This will obviously help with more vehicles on the road. Unfortunately, for hackney drivers, we haven't been able to offer that offer due to hackney drivers being a flagged down system. They don't have taxi operators behind them. What we've also done is we've recognised the livery requirements was adding a significant financial burden to drivers. And with the impact of cost of living crisis, together with the lack of the availability of vehicles, we are removing this requirement and replacing it with a requirement for door signage. So this will also help drivers that way as well. We've got several other things that we're looking at, but today I'm asking Cabinet to look at our knowledge test and our livery policy, please. I don't know if Nicola or Graham's got anything else that they would like to bring in, but what I'm hoping is this will get more vehicles on the road, help people become drivers, and give them employment, which will then obviously help the people of Plymouth and our visitors and everybody that visits our city to be able to get around safely of an evening. Oh, during the day, I should say. Thank you, Leader.
Solly, thank you. Nicola?
I don't have anything extra to add unless anybody's got any particular questions that they want to ask about it.
It's difficult to quantify how many extra vehicles and drivers this will bring into the trade, but it's seen as a positive step and a positive move towards encouraging newer blood and more input to the trade as a whole.
Any observations from the Cabinet? Can I bring in Jemima first, and then I'll come back to you, Sally?
I want to say I just think it's really positive. I know, I have anecdotal reports from my daughter and her young women friends going out, really wanting to go out and enjoy themselves in the city centre and enjoy all our nighttime economy has to offer. But there is an issue sometimes about getting taxis home, and that puts people off. So anything that we can do that encourages people into the trade, which then will, really help with people's reticence about going out. We want to really encourage people to enjoy what we've got to offer. So, yeah, wholeheartedly support this and anything we can do to get more people back into the trade.
Sally?
Yeah, I just would like... Is that me? Try that again? Sorry. I didn't really want to be on speakerphone. I think it's really worth pointing out, last time this policy was looked at, the knowledge test was missed out. And what we did see was, and there was a sheer accident, and what we did see was quite a few drivers coming forward because, we're looking at the cost of living. Obviously, safety is first. But, this is another barrier to stop people from being able to apply for a taxi licence. And we did see more people coming forward. So I'm very hopeful that we will see those people coming forward. But, I really want to stress the safety. The knowledge test is going, but they are going through the technology with their taxi operator, so we can watch, they can watch the drivers going around, so they know exactly where they're going. So there's no unsafety about this whatsoever. I have literally looked under every stone to make sure that this is a safe and fit policy to come forward to this council.
There's no doubt about it. Those issues around shortages, have been something that the public have mentioned to councillors, but also the trade. I'm thinking hospitality industry. I'm thinking about trade unions and safety of workers coming home at night and the lack of availability of stuff. So there's plenty of scope for more people coming into the industry to provide more services to a public that actually wants it. I think it's also important to note that in terms of the recommendations, Sally, that we are actually, giving as well as taking, if you like. And we are, for example, releasing the obligation to change the livery, for example. Now, we know that was tax deductible anyway as a business expense, but nevertheless, we're talking about barriers. And removing the requirement to have that livery change, which I know a lot of the trade have actually asked us to consider, and now we have done. So I hope the trade understands that we have played fair by them and listened to what they represented on that. I think the report is clear. There'll be some more recommendations. We're making these now in a policy way, but there's also some practice decisions to be made at the next meeting of the taxi licensing panel. Is that right? You've got a few going there, Nicola?
Yeah, I think that's going through on the 10th of February. The remaining parts of the consultation are going to that taxi licensing committee. Subject to the views of the committee, of course. So this is part one of a two-parter, if you will. Okay, so the recommendations are on pages 44 of the report. You've got the reports in front of you. Can I see all those in favour of recommendations 1 and 2, please? All in favour of that? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to item number 12. Councillor Coker is recused himself, as I believe the vernacular is these days. You'll be coming back for the announcements later. Yeah, thank you. I'll just make sure. So, the item 12 is some recommendations to changes in the licensing statement of policy. Now, like the last one, which we made recommendations which go to the council, this too has recommendations that go to the council for final approval, right? And so, Sally, can I invite you to take us through the Licensing Act 2003?
Thank you, Leader. This licensing policy needs to be looked at every 5 years. So it's a statutory thing that we have to do. I do need to explain that this is probably the first, well, it is the first policy since COVID. So under the licensing policy, you will see some changes that have been made due to things changing in our world around from COVID. So under the Licensing Act 2003, Plymouth City Council require the detail of how to intend to operate and promote the licences objections in our area by publishing a statement of licensing policy. Leader, I'm not prepared to read the whole thing out. I do accept that the Cabinet probably have read their papers, but just to point out some of the things that has been added to our policy since COVID is the amendments or the reflection of changes for premises providing alcohol delivery service. As people will be aware, since COVID, we have more delivery services now. It's a lot easier to I don't know, order a takeaway and get a beer at the same time, or even order your shopping. It's a lot more convenient to people now, which contains alcohol. So we're asking premises to make sure that the alcohol is going to the correct place, and looking obviously at age and things like that. The one of the other things is the reference to our terrorism bill, which was Martin's Law that is looking at coming in, and this is from Manchester's bombing that we've looked at, and to make sure all our public venues are responsible for certain locations of threat and terrorism, and implement appropriate measures there. So that's another one that's been added. But you can see the small summary of different things that have come through, but the main of the policy, leader, is same as what we normally have, and it is done, like I say, every 5 years. But I'm happy for any questions that anyone might have of me.
Before I take any questions from members, is there anything, Nicola or Graham, that you want to add to what Sally has said?
Could I just add one thing? I think one of the key ones in here is it shows we've inserted into the policy our support for the Community Alcohol Partnership, which shows the industry's commitment to responsible drinking, and I think that's a good one that we've got into the policy.
I mean, I know that I don't normally recommend to the public that they read comprehensive documents like this, but actually, I think if people do go onto the website and have a look at this statement of licensing policy, I know it's subject to council decision in a few weeks' time, but it just gives you an insight into just how complicated it is. This piece of work by the council, which I think, because it's not like trumpets going off and drums and everything, you know, people wouldn't know it is happening, but it represents a comprehensive slice of Plymouth life, which we have to regulate, which we have to work in partnership with the trade and the various aspects of both the nighttime and the daytime economy. I mean, this covers everything. So it's really helping to keep Plymouth safe, is what it is, in every sense of the word, and it's a comprehensive document. So once again, I know everybody's had to read it who works for us in this place. That's not easy, but thank you for the update that you've brought us in this space, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2029 for the next iteration. I hope there's nothing like COVID happens between now and 29 that would necessitate any revisions, but it's pretty comprehensive. Sally, I'll just give you the floor to sum up, please.
Thank you, Leader. Leader, I just would like to make a note to thank all members of staff. There's been 2 very big policies since us taking control that we've really thrown up in the air and had a really good look at. And I know it's been really hard work, and there's been a lot of difficult decisions being made, but I just would like to thank everybody who's been involved in it, and everyone who took part in the consultation as well for the taxi trade as well, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to those of you who came today, in person and online. Yes, I'm talking about you, Ruth. So I can now ask, please, if we can recommend to the City Council that the draft licensing statement of policy is adopted with effect from the 31st of March 24. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's agreed, thank you. And if we could now call back in Councillor Coker. And we'll move on to item number 13. Something that I wanted to draw to your attention, which I don't think's happened, I think has happened since the last meeting, but if you remember, I think we were going to dissolve the joint committee, the
the Devon and Somerset Joint Committee that was in existence to look after the LEP, and the requirement since the LEP was being done away with by the government, that there would be therefore no reason for the Joint Committee. Anyway, all I would like to say is that the Joint Committee has been dissolved with effect from the 31st of December 2023, following resolutions to withdraw from 12 of the 14 constituent authorities. If you remember, there was a requirement of 8 of the 14 to withdraw in order for it to collapse, and now that has happened. So I just wanted to let you know that. I know you've been anxious about that and waiting to hear, so I thought I'd better let you know. A number of announcements of good news. Although the one I'm really waiting for is the Lottery Horizons project announcement, and we're not expecting that news for a week or two, so I can't bring you any news on that. But I did want to just give you a couple of Freeport updates that you might not have heard about. The Plymouth and Devon Freeport will be securing the Sherford employment land. Now, the Freeport is funding the South Hams to purchase this land from the Housing Consortium, and then we'll be looking to work closely with South Hams to bring forward various employment schemes. This is so significant as the employment land in this part is scarce, and we are confidently protecting one of the most important sites in the southwest. The other bit of good news is the green hydrogen plant at Langage. I mean, this is very significant. 20 million plus funding for the green hydrogen hub has been secured by Carlton Power as part of the UK's round 1 hydrogen allocation round. Now, we're hoping that the plant will be operational by 2026. Subject to a satisfactory pipeline connection, which I know John Hart is, Devon is exercised by. Hopefully that will be done. I mean, what it will mean is a huge boost for green energy within this part of the world, but also I think a real demonstration of our Freeport is actually beginning to deliver results. I'll leave my announcements for council, the rest of them. So I've got item 14 now, which is cabinet member updates. Jemima, I think you've got one or two.
I have, thank you, Leader. I'm going to start off with just telling you a little bit about in December 2023, elected members, Plymouth City Council employees, businesses and members of the public supported our campaign to make Christmas 2023 extra special for our care experienced young people. And we received in excess of 100 Christmas presents donated, as well as gift vouchers and a large amount of cash donations, which meant that personal assistants could go and buy additional gifts. And this generosity meant we were able to provide all care experienced young people open to the Care Leavers team a carefully chosen present that they really appreciated. 30 young people and their guests attended a special Christmas dinner at the Hotel Continental, and for some this is the first time they'd been to a hotel for an event like that. There were a further 8 young people who'd wanted to attend but were unable to on the day, so they had their dinner packaged up and individually delivered to them at home to enjoy in the afternoon so that they didn't miss out. So I want to say a huge thank you to all the teams that made that happen. I think it's a lovely thing that our care leavers know that they were, really being thought about properly at Christmas time. Then I'm going to move on to events. We're really fortunate in Plymouth to have so many amazing events because we know that a thriving, inclusive events programme can be transformative for our city in so many ways. Events improve perceptions of our place, generate local pride. They deliver high levels of economic impact by driving visitors and footfall, which in turn translates to spend in our businesses and assists with the city's economic growth. and they create an opportunity for communities to come together and support people's well-being and happiness. And in the end, and maybe most importantly, they're fun. And so many events that we support are free. And this is really important in a cost of living crisis, where one of the first things that family have to give up is those little extra treats that bring people together, give people a break, and make life fun. And that's why we brought back Bonfire Night last year, and that's why we're working so hard to offset event costs through sponsorship and commercial income so we can keep things free. Key highlights on the Hoe in this coming year include the half marathon in April, and in June we have Armed Forces Day and the Rehabilitation Triathlon, plus the new Summer Sessions Music Festival, where I will mention again how much I'm looking forward to seeing Blondie, and I know everybody else has their own favourites of who they're looking forward to see. And then, of course, we've got the British Fireworks Championship, which returns in August. And we'll be working with our fantastic partners, PWP and the City Centre Company, to deliver Pirates Weekend, Flavour Fest's 20th anniversary, the West End Carnival, Seafest, the Christmas Market, seems funny to be talking about next year's Christmas Market, and the Christmas light switch-on events, which were just brilliant last year. I was only able to observe online, but, you know, the amount of people that turned out, and I had visitors down over Christmas who were in town and said it just looked amazing. And so well done to all the teams for making that so brilliant. We'll also be supporting a whole range of other events, from Pride to the big tribute festival to Oktoberfest to circuses and community fun days. All in all, there'll be well over 150 days of outdoor events taking place, and that's just the ones I've mentioned here. And if you also think about the incredible work happening with the concerts at Home Park, events at the Box, the Theatre Royal, the universities, Plymouth Culture, the National Marine Park, there's pretty much going to be something going on every single day. And I think that's really something to celebrate. And my final update is just a bit of information about the Box and some of the great media coverage that we've been getting. We got a mention in Country Life. We had an article in Art newspaper about John O'Comfra and his installation in the Box, and a mention in The Guardian on things, you know, shows to look out for in 2024, which the Time As Always Now was highlighted. More media coverage is anticipated in the new year. We've been mentioned in House and Garden. The Dutch Flowers closed yesterday. And the Armada portrait is returning to the Woburn Abbey estate, and plans are well underway for the next exhibition, Beyond the Page, which opens on 17th of February at St Luke's. The Box had a really busy time during the Christmas and New Year period with excellent visitor numbers. And I wanted to mention that 2 of our city's cultural leaders have been named in top 100 power lists, you know, that they compile at the beginning or the end of the year in their respective industries. So James Mackenzie Blackman from Theatre Royal Plymouth was named in the Stage's top 100 influential people list, and the Box's Victoria Pomeroy was mentioned in Art List's top 100, which just goes to show how Plymouth's cultural reputation continues to grow. I think it's brilliant. Thank you, Leader.
That's fantastic news to end with. So I don't think there are any more updates for Cabinet to give today. Apart from me, I'm going to give the LGA roundup. We talked earlier on about the local government finance settlement. And I just wanted to give you a little flavour of what the LGA have been up to on our behalf. Basically, they talked about the lack of extra council funding really has been unthinkable, given, you know, what had been laid out before. But unfortunately, unthinking is what the government are. Why? Because the settlement does not provide enough funding to meet the severe cost and demand pressures, which has left councils of all political colours and types warning of the serious challenges they face to set balanced budgets next year. And we know that the government MPs at the moment are out on manoeuvres criticising every local authority in their patch as somehow it's all their fault. Well, let me tell you, when you have had 14 consecutive years of defunding by a government, you're entitled as a local council to say enough is enough. And we cannot take it anymore. But it's not just the council that can't take it anymore. The economy of Plymouth can't take it anymore. The cumulative effect of the cuts that we've had over the last 14 years is getting on for £750 million. And that's not money for the council, that's money in the local Plymouth economy. And so it's important to remember that when the government defunds councils, it's also defunding communities and defunding local economies. Councils are going to have £64 billion to spend on local services next year, but as I said earlier on, that assumes councils charging the max on council tax and adult social care precept to their residents. And what that does mean, this lack of extra funding means that that £4 billion gap over the next 2 years, which has been identified across the country, is still there. We also have been working, lobbying the Chief Secretary of the Treasury on the Household Support Fund. I think we've talked about that at this Cabinet before. Councils are united in the view that the fund must be continued beyond March 24 and for a minimum of a year. Demand for local welfare support remains at record levels, with the cost of energy, housing and other essentials remaining exceptionally high relative to household income. And as Chris has outlined earlier on, significantly reduced local welfare support offers risks to more households falling through the gaps and that's likely to, as well as being a personal individual tragedy for those families, is also a cost to the local authorities going forward as well. It really is foolish, penny wise and pound foolish by the government. We're also, Louise Gittins, who's the chair of the LGA's Children and Young People Board, has been very, very active in lobbying for greater support across a range of issues. Free childcare hours starting in April. I mean, we've been warning about the fact that providers say they won't have the resources to manage the increased demand. The LGA are asking for additional help, but so far our prayers have not been answered. Children's homes backed by private equity on the rise. Why is this important? 1 in 4 now in a children's care home in England have the involvement of an investment company. So a lot of our tax dollars, as it were, are going on private profit. Just to give you some idea of the growth, so I said 1 in 4 places now. It was 1 in 6 in 2018. So that's an alarming jump. And again, why is that? That's because of the lack of certainty for investment by local authorities. That's why that's happening. And like I say, whenever those equity companies are there, I'm led to believe that they're not in it for the benefit of everybody's health. They're in there because they believe they can make a lot of money, and ultimately that's a real drag and drain on resources. And last but not least, Louise has been picking up on the £2.5 million bill for pupils with special needs. Councils continue to face significant challenges with the rising demand from children with SEND. We've warned of increased costs for children's placements, raising profits for providers again, and we asked for the settlement to reflect the spiralling costs, but no additional funding was provided through the settlement again. It really was. I mean, you might argue that was very ineffective lobbying. I'd rather present it as a government that really has tuned out to the needs, the real needs of local government right now. Okay, that's that. I think that's the end of today's meeting. Can I thank you for your attendance today? We look forward to having all 10 of us at the next meeting, we hope, in February, when we'll be talking about the budget again. just for a change. So there we are. But thanks for today. And like again, can I say again, it's great to have you back, Jemima. And we're going to look forward to 2024. There's a big year coming up of change, political change, and we hope to be helping to accelerate some of that change. So until